In 2015, the Irvington Summer Softball League celebrated its 6th season. A 6th year of softball, a 6th year of community, a 6th year of traditions, and a 6th unforgettable journey through the ISSL summer. Even though this season was arguably after the ISSL's golden age, which could be regarded as the first 4 seasons, this season was arguably the greatest ISSL season in the league's modern era. And unlike other seasons in this modern era, the league didn't have to spend as much time worrying about attendance, and instead could focus on the thrilling, exciting, and competitive softball that the league was founded for. And for that, Season 6 deserves a rewind.
Let's go! We're going to Disney World! Disney World, baby! Yeah! Got time, there we go!
You know, the ISSL is just one of those things.
Oh, say, can you see?
Be there or be square.
For the first and only time ever in its 10-year history, the ISSL opened up the season in April due to players being available and eager to play. It opened up on April 19th at Memorial, and it was fully attended. The season started with only Sunday games at Memorial for the first 4 weeks, minus Mother's Day. During this stretch, Ben Fredernali brought several of his college friends to one of the games, and Mike Fitch brought some more friends of his too. Dennis DiOrio from the previous season played in one of these games, but mysteriously got angry when runners took extra bases, and he stopped coming afterwards. With great attendance in the first several games, Thursday games at Mazzaro's Field were added starting on May 21st. This was the 3rd year of games being played at the high school, and the last year to date as well. Just like the other years, the field was set up with home plate on the southwest corner, with a fence in right field. This made Mikey Mataro extra valuable in these games, since the fence was only roughly 200 feet away down the right field line. For one of the games, the home plate area was too muddy to use, so the field was reconfigured so that home plate was placed in the northeast corner of the field. This configuration led to an interesting moment when Mikey Mataro blasted a home run so far, it went over the bleachers and road and hit the windshield of his own parked car. The most memorable Mazzaro's game took place on June 4th with the usual configuration. In the bottom of the last inning, the home team was down 1 run with 1 out when Manny Figueroa hit a ground ball with no one on base. The throw to first base pulled Michael Leggero off the bag, which resulted in a collision with Manny. As a result, both players never touched the bag until after the play, where Leggero was the first to do so. There was a lengthy ensuing argument, which included a rocks, paper, scissors between Manny and third baseman Joseph Keller, which Keller won. Ultimately, there were 2 outs and no one on. However, Javier Anderson then grounded to third baseman Keller, who made a throwing error, and Eddie Fuentes drove a ball over center fielder Mikey Mataro's head for a 2-run walk-off home run anyway, in what was perhaps the most exciting regular season game of the year. These Mazzaro's games were great for the offenses and quite difficult for the defenses. Several players were keeping their own offensive stats, like Joseph Keller and Jeff Friedlander, who both had batting averages above 500 before the All-Star game. Meanwhile, several players had down defensive seasons. Joseph Keller, Jeff Friedlander, Mike Russo, and Nick Cipriano were all noted for making many throwing errors throughout the season. Keller seemed to completely lose confidence in his throwing arm and was lobbing throws more than usual, many of which were off target or so slow that runners like Michael Saad and Mike Russo could beat them out. Russo was overthrowing bases often, and Nick Cipriano was criticized by many in the league for trying to look too fancy, resulting in many throwing errors. This part of the season saw the introductions of Mike King, Ryan Kelly, Ali Darvish, and Preston Hennis, and also saw the returns of Brett Toby, and Eddie Grigoriev, even though they had a tendency to leave the game after only a few innings. For one of the Sunday games at Memorial, Joey Mataro and Mike Fitch invited too many non-league members to play in an attempt to raise the attendance for the game. There ended up being nearly 3 full teams, so Joey convinced the Irvington team to sit first and do 3-inning games starting with Dobbs versus Riverdale, which Dobbs won. Irvington then beat Dobbs 2-1 and then easily beat the Riverdale team, but not without controversy. Mike Fitch was caught on the base paths and tagged by Joseph Keller while sliding into third. After an argument, though, Keller beat Fitch in rocks, paper, scissors. However, Brian Kaplan from the Riverdale team refused to accept the result and forced Fitch to stay at third base. Even though he would end up not scoring in the inning, and the Riverdale team would still easily lose the game, this created the slide equals automatic safe trope, used as an insult against Mike Fitch. After this, the Riverdale team left, setting up one final Dobbs versus Irvington 6-inning game. Despite Dobbs having a sizable lead, one of their better players, Rocco Cipriano, had to leave in the final inning, leaving a large opening in the infield. The Irvington team came all the way back and won on a walk-off ground ball from Eddie Grigoriev. Meanwhile, a committee of 6 league members began planning some competitive games for the league. Ben, Tom, Jeff, Joey, Evan, and Joseph Keller came up with 3 games. First, a second annual 12-inning auction game, this time to be captained by Joey Mataro and Jeff Friedlander, 1-on-1. Then, Joseph Keller bullied Evan Childs into taking him and Eddie Fuentes on in the All-Star game, with Mikey Mataro as a co-captain. Then finally, Ben and Tom would take on Joey and Alex in the ISSL CS in August. Up first was the auction draft between Joey and Jeff. Exactly 20 people declared eligible for the draft, so the team split 10-on-10 with a DH. Jeff came out very aggressive at the beginning of the draft, making high bids and immediately spending 59 out of his 100 imaginary dollars on Tom Celano, Joseph Keller, and Mikey Mataro with the first 3 picks.
Sold. Tom Celano goes to Jeff Friedlander for $18.
Joseph Keller, $19.
We got Joseph Keller for $19.
21.
Joseph Keller for $21 to Jeff Friedlander, going once, going twice. Sold. Mikey Mataro for $20. Going once, going twice. Sold.
This left Joey open to taking the rest of the talented players in the draft pool, except for one mistake.
Ben Fraternale,
We got Ben Fraternale for
$8.
We got Ben Fraternale for $8 to Joey Mataro, going once. Ben Fraternale for $8 going twice. Sold to Joey Mataro, $8. There's nothing wrong with that value. Nothing wrong at all.
Joey expected Jeff to make a higher bid, but it never came, which added a predominant pull hitter to his already pull-happy team. He also let Cormac Quinn go to Jeff's team for only $10, but due to the contrast in draft strategies, it was Jeff who was forced to take the last 3 players to fill out his team.
Eddie G, Joey Galano, Michael Leggero. Welcome to the squad. Great draft.
The game was on June 7th at Scenic 1, which was only the 2nd league game played at Scenic that year. It was also after only 9 regular season games played so far. Jeff won the rocks, paper, scissors for home field advantage 3 days prior after the collision game, despite Joey claiming that rocks, paper, scissors was unfair. This game was also 1 day after Evan, Keller, and Leggero forced Mikey Mataro to visit the Hermit's grave. Immediately, Nick Cipriano was making demands to Joey over his position and spot in the order, and was mentioning things about leaving the game, which annoyed Joey and the team greatly. The game started with Jeff's home team jumping out to a 5-1 lead halfway through the game, with almost everyone taking part in the offense. The road team was hitting mostly flyouts to left fielder Mikey Mataro and groundouts to third baseman Joseph Keller. To counter this, Mike Russo decided to bat the entire game lefty, which he had rarely done before. This resulted mostly in groundouts to second baseman Joey Galano, even though one of those he beat out. Joey Mataro was the only hitter who succeeded, getting 5 hits and causing trouble seemingly every time he came up, chipping away at the lead little by little. Tom Celano's pitching for the home team was heavily criticized for inaccuracy, but mostly by members of his own team. The home team's defense started to break down in the later innings as the pitching got more wild, and this was highlighted by a communication issue in the infield when Tom Celano threw to an unoccupied third base when Keller was trying to field the ball as well. The road team tied the game at 5 in the top of the 10th inning out of 12, but still didn't have many hits to show for it. Then midway through the 11th inning, Nick Cipriano walked away and left the game, as he mentioned earlier, saying that he needed to visit his grandmother, an excuse that sounded suspicious. 3 years later, he admitted that he left to go play in a different softball game. This moved Luke Celano from catcher to second base, and while he was a solid infielder, at the time, he didn't have the range of Cipriano. Joseph Keller led off the bottom of the 11th inning with a seeing eye single rolled through the right side past the lunging Luke Celano, a play that Cipriano arguably could have made. Then with 2 outs, Jeff Friedlander drove a ball deep to center field that flirted with the fence nearly 260 feet away. Joey sprinted back, but the ball tipped off his fully extended glove just near the wall and scored Joseph Keller from first base, giving the home team a 6-5 lead. Then in the top of the 12th inning, with Cipriano not there to bat with Russo on first and 1 out, a ball was hit to shallow right, and Alex Zucchini made the catch on the run, and then threw to first baseman Mike Fitch to double off Mike Russo to end the game. After the game was over, Jeff's home team continued to argue about Tom Celano's pitching, and Joey's road team continued to complain about Nick Cipriano and the fact that the team only got 9 hits, 5 of which were by Joey Mataro. That night, Joey called Joseph Keller and they had a 90-minute discussion about what went wrong for their team. This would change how players would be drafted in the future. The players were so eager to get the All-Star game going that it was scheduled earlier than ever before, on June 28th, after only 5 or 6 games since the auction game. One of the games is still debated as to if it counts as an ISSL game, because on June 17th, Joey Mataro publicly posted about a game in Hawthorne and managed to get Mikey Mataro, Joseph Keller, Mike Russo, Alex Zucchini, Clark Bocha Jr., and Ryan Kelly to play a small game with 3 Breezemont team members and a few random people at Broadway Field in Hawthorne in the town of Mount Pleasant. This led to a famous excuse as to why Joey Mataro couldn't reach a home run fence 250 feet away. Joey claimed that one of his deep flyouts would have gone over, but Joseph Keller pitched a ball that had a hole in it, foiling his chances. The next week, on June 21st, the week before the All-Star game, Michael Leggero would set a record for the wrong reasons, grounding into 3 double plays in the same game, 2 regular 6-4-3 plays, and 1 grounded to shortstop, where base runner Brandon Sherry was tagged out, then the throw to first. It was time for the All-Star Game draft. Unfortunately, Ryan Kelly did not make it through the vote. Joe Mataro was injured, and Manny Figueroa declared ineligible for the game and left the league altogether, and hasn't played since. So Keller and Fuentes took on Evan and Mikey, with the latter being the home team due to losing the coin toss. Evan Childs was notorious for being 5-0 in All-Star games.
I've won every All-Star game. I'm 5-0.
But Keller's motto was to make him 5-1. Evan and Mikey surprised many by taking Jeff Friedlander first overall over Joey, claiming that Jeff was heavily messaging, hoping to be on their team. Keller and Fuentes took Joey second overall, and then took Mike Russo third, which also received immediate ridicule. While Evan regretted not picking Cormac Quinn fourth, the next several picks were regarded as reasonable, until Keller and Fuentes picked Michael Rosenberg ninth overall, solely for his base running. But then, Evan and Mikey made perhaps the most ridiculed pick of the draft.
For the 12th overall pick for the ISSL All-Star Game, Evan and myself select Michael Leggero for trash talking purposes.
At the time, Ben Fraternali was regarded as a far superior player to Leggero, and after the draft ended, as Keller and Fuentes were leaving Ben's house, Mikey and Evan ran out into the road to find them, proposing to trade Leggero back for Ben, which Keller and Fuentes refused. The road team was very confident to win by a large margin, even though almost no one commented on their team chat. For the first time, though, the captains were forced to replace a player when Luke Celano dropped out. To find a comparable player, the 4 captains were able to conscript Douglas Geller, who had only played 2 games so far in the season due to an injury. Evan and Mikey were then upset when Keller wouldn't allow Freddie Figueroa to fill the spot, which Keller consistently refused due to Freddie not playing in a single regular season game. The day before the All-Star game, Joey Mataro set up another interleague matchup with his invite-only team taking on Mike Fitch's Riverdale team. They played 2 games, splitting them. However, Brian Kaplan was at that game and said he didn't even know that he was drafted into the All-Star game, didn't watch the video, and wasn't even available. At this point, Keller let Mikey and Evan take Freddie Figueroa and took Douglas Geller onto his own team. Eddie Fuentes was mostly absent from the internet and was angry when he heard of the developments over the previous few days and failed to convince the other captains to allow Eddie Heiss into the game. On June 28th, it was game day, and it rained all morning. Suddenly, rumors were that Leggero would not be able to play due to illness, uncertain if it was a hangover or an actual illness. The teams showed up to Scenic, but Larry Coleman would not allow the game to happen, saying if the game moved to Memorial, no one would bother them. This was the first time the All-Star game was played anywhere other than Scenic Hudson Park. The rain started back up once the game started, marking the second time it ever rained during the All-Star game. Joseph Keller sang the national anthem in an exact impersonation of Mikey Mataro's rendition at the 2013 ISSLCS.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?
The game quickly became a wash in more ways than one. Tom Celano pitched for the home team to the chagrin of Joseph Keller, so they made Mikey and Evan regret it. Keller immediately singled up the middle to start the game, and Russo followed, batting lefty and hit a double. Keller was then caught in a rundown between third and home, but slid under the tag of catcher Michael Leggero, who was reportedly not feeling 100%. Joey and Cormack immediately drove in more runs, resulting in a 3-0 first inning lead, but that was only the beginning. After 4 innings, it was 8-1, and then after 9 innings, 16-1, after which Tom Celano was taken off the mound by the captains. Players on the home team were very demoralized, and others, like Mike Fitch, Michael Leggero, and Mikey Mataro, were hardly trying anymore. Yet the onslaught continued. Mike Russo again batted lefty the entire game, but this time went 8 for 10 with 6 runs batted in, 7 runs scored, and 16 total bases, and hitting for the first ever All-Star Game cycle.
Our 2, 3, and 4 were 12 for 12 in our first 4 at-bats.
The top of the order was unstoppable, going 24 for 39 in the game. The bottom 2, less powerful hitters, Douglas Geller and Michael Rosenberg, also combined to go 9 for 18, with Geller picking up 2 doubles and 0 errors at first base, making his release by Evan and Mikey a questionable decision. Mike Fitch, Evan Childs, and Michael Leggero all tried their hands pitching for the home team, but they surrendered another 11 runs before the game was over. Meanwhile, road team captain Eddie Fuentes gave up only 1 run the whole game, giving up just 14 hits, all singles. For the home team, Mikey Mataro went hitless, and Clark Pocha Jr. led the team with 3 hits and drove in their only run. Despite Eddie Fuentes also going hitless, the road team would go on to win 27-1. That sets the records for runs scored, fewest runs given up, and biggest run differential. Also, the record for hits was potentially set with 36 by the road team. They also tied the defensive record with only 3 errors, while the home team committed 9, the most errors for a team in the All-Star game since 2011. Clark Pocha Jr. was the final out, flying out to right fielder Alex Zucchini, and the road team celebrated on the field, despite winning by 26 runs. Mikey Mataro made a suicide post on Facebook, and Eddie Fuentes continued to brag to the other captains, while members of the winning team celebrated at McGeek Run Park at the Hastings waterfront, where Mikey also came and owned up to his loss. Even though the road team was favored to win, the blowout came as a surprise to many.
It was surprising, I didn't expect it, but it can happen to anyone.
So now, with the All-Star game over, there was another month of regular season softball before the ISSL CS. This part of the season saw the comeback of Season 2 player George Semetis and the introduction of Matthew Spencer on July 23rd. While he wasn't available for the ISSL CS or even the next year's All-Star game, both he and George would become regulars from then on. There were also brief stints from Eddie Heiss and Daniel Seaver. This was also the month where the Mikey Blueberry trope was started by Ben Fraternali, creating another lengthy trash talk post, even though a major game was not coming up. Joey Galano, Joseph Keller, Tom Celano, and Jake Island joined in, and it quickly became a meme battle. Eddie Fuentes set up the league's first and only Tuesday game of the season on July 7th. The game was not well attended, and it only lasted 3 innings, and it had an unfortunate event in that third inning. Eddie was trying out different batting gloves all season long, but lost his grip of the bat during a swing, and flung the bat backwards and hit Jackie Nicole McKennedy in the face, causing an injury and effectively ending the game. On July 30th, with heavy rain in the later afternoon, the Thursday game was looking like a sure rainout. However, Joey got a number of players to commit to a later start at the Mercy College turf field, and it turned into a full game. The first time an ISSL game was played in Dobbs Ferry. During this game, Joseph Keller picked up his 100th hit for the season, a feat likely not accomplished since Season 2 by anyone. He would finish the season with 124 hits and a .532 batting average. The ISSL CS was now coming up. The All-Star game wasn't close, and some, like Joseph Keller and Mikey Mataro, were unhappy with the upcoming captain matchup of Ben and Tom versus Joey and Alex, thinking that the latter pair had an unfair advantage. So much so that Keller tried to influence Ben and Tom into not picking him. He began trash-talking them immediately after the date was selected for the game, and worked to convince them to pick Jeff first overall if it came to that. His intent was to act as immature as possible, and saying that picking him over Jeff would unleash years of jubilant trash talk from Keller to Jeff. Mikey posted publicly that he'd rather slit his wrist than play for Ben and Tom's team. Both Keller and Mikey received negative reactions from Jeff and Tom before even Joey jumped in. The captains agreed to conduct another live draft, this time at Memorial Park, even though the videos were never uploaded. 11 out of the 20 players showed up to the draft, and Ben and Tom were forced to take the first pick. They decided to take Jeff first overall, making Keller and Mikey feel like their antics worked. Joey and Alex took both of them with the second and third picks. The most memorable part of the draft took place at the end, with Joey and Alex choosing their last player. Joey teased the audience, looking directly at Ryan Kelly and saying, "Who's that kid in the green shirt?" as if he was about to pick him. Then he dramatically revealed he was picking Jake Island, sending the audience erupting with laughter. Unfortunately, Joey Galano dropped out of the game with a few days to spare, and after a long argument between the captains on a replacement, a surprising player was approved by Joey, Deepak McCleary, who hadn't played in a few years. He agreed to make the commute and played for Ben and Tom's team, but wasn't much of a factor in the game. Joey and Alex's road team looked far superior, and it got even stronger when Ali Darvish no-showed the game, and had no memory of the game later in the day when responding to Joey's messages. For Ben and Tom's team, Eddie Heiss showed up several innings late and was inserted at the 10 spot in the order. The first game was played at Scenic Field 1, and the remaining games were played at Memorial, with each game lasting 7 innings. Mikey Mataro drove in 2 runs with a single in the top of the first inning off of pitcher Eddie Fuentes, taking advantage of a slow outfield. A rally was brewing for the home team in the bottom of the inning, but it was killed when Jeff Friedlander was picked off of first base with 2 outs on a throw from third baseman Joseph Keller, and tagged by Clark Pocha Jr. just before a run scored. While both teams put up runs, the game remained close because Joey placed defenders in weird positions, like Mikey Mataro at shortstop, who failed to make a single play. He also had George Semetis as a starting pitcher, even though he threw almost no strikes. Joey Mataro would have to close out the game. The road team had a 3-run lead in the bottom of the 7th inning, but Ryan Kelly got a big bloop single to start a rally, and Alex Zucchini dropped a fly ball in right field with 2 outs, moving the tying run to third base and the winning run to first for Eddie Fuentes. But in the big moment, he popped up to the right side in foul territory, and first baseman Clark Pocha Jr. had just enough room to make the catch, narrowly winning the first game by a single run. For the second game, Joey and Alex would be the home team, and they decided to have Clark Pocha Jr. pitch and George Semetis play shortstop. Ben and Tom's road team loaded the bases in the top of the first inning with no outs, and put runners on second and third with no outs in the second, and blew both opportunities. After that, Joey and Alex's home team started to score and built a big lead, capped by a 3-run home run by Mikey Mataro. Ben Fraternali flew out to Joey center field to end the game. While the second game's final score wasn't close, the sweep does not show how close Game 1 was, and the major opportunity that Ben and Tom's team had early in the second game. Overall, Joseph Keller and Alex Zucchini were the only 2 players to win all 3 competitive games in 2015. After the game, members of the winning team went back to the Hastings waterfront, but Michael Leggero spied on them the whole time, creating an awkward situation. So with all 3 big games over with, normally it would spell the end of the season, but the players were not done. The league twice tried to move games to Zinsser Park in Hastings, but the grounds were soaked the first time and occupied the second time. So the first game after the ISSL CS was played again at Mercy College. However, the next few games had low attendance, looking like the season would soon end. But during this stretch, the players came up with 2 mini-games, the infield game and the outfield game. The final Thursday game of the month had good attendance, and that pushed the league into a possible September run. On the final Sunday game of the month, Mike Fitch announced to the whole league that he would become a father, resulting in applause from the league. After the next attempt at a game failed, on Sunday, September 6th, the ISSL made history again, playing its first ever game in September. The game was played at scenic Hudson Park, and while it wasn't well attended, the game was played, and everybody knew it would be the final game of the year. It was also the last regular season ISSL game ever played at scenic Hudson Park. A highly successful ISSL season had come to a close, one that no one would soon forget.
And of course, a game would be played in November. While some people refer to it as a Calhoun game, it actually took place a week before Thanksgiving, but it happened nonetheless. Altogether, an estimated 36 games were played in Season 6, which was the highest number of games played since Season 3. Unfortunately, none of the 4 seasons that followed had even half that number of games. While Seasons 7 through 10 provided many a thrill, one can only hope there could be another season like Season 6.